Welcome to the channel Bong Toi Trong Dem Darkness in the Night. Today, I'll tell you a true story, recorded by writer Lean Ton Dat. From the account of a man who once faced what he called the breath of the dead. The story is titled, The Abandoned House on the Pine Hill, My name is Tran Min Kang, a doctor. 10 years ago, I left Saigon and moved to Dalat to open a small clinic. But life didn't go as planned. Rent in the city was too expensive, so I had to find a cheaper place, out near the Pine Hills. About 10 kilometers from town. An acquaintance introduced me to an old house, saying it was very cheap and only needed a bit of cleaning. Sounded like a good deal, but everyone whispered the same warning. Greater than that place. Something happened there. No one has ever stayed more than 3 nights. I laughed. Probably just local superstition. I'm a doctor. I don't believe in ghosts. That afternoon, I drove up the hill alone. The dirt road twisted endlessly, lined with dark pine trees whispering in the wind like murmuring voices. December in Dalat, fog thick as a curtain. Visibility only a few meters ahead. Then the house appeared among the trees, moss-covered walls, a green-stained tile roof, rotting wooden doors, surrounded by wild grass. In front stood a tall pine, leaning as if to shield the house, but when I looked closer, it felt like someone was standing there, silently watching me. I stopped, squinting. No, just a shadow. I reassured myself and unlocked the door. Inside, the air was damp and moldy. Dust blanketed the furniture. On the wall hung an old photograph, a young woman in a white dye. Hair down, face turned slightly aside, her eyes distant. For some reason, a chill ran down my spine just looking at it. Probably left behind by the previous owner. I muttered, hanging my coat on a chair before starting to clean. Night fell fast. When I lit the oil lamp, its yellow glow filled the room. My shadow stretched across the wall, long and thin, like another figure standing beside me. I cleared a small corner, spread a mat, and began jotting notes about what needed repairs. Outside, the wind sighed through the pines. The rustling leaves sounded like whispering voices. Near midnight, I heard knock, knock, soft, deliberate taps beneath the floorboards. I looked up, waited, silence. Maybe the wind, or a rat. Then it came again, steady, rhythmic, like footsteps circling the house. I grabbed the oil lamp and walked around. Nothing, only the cold mist brushing against my face. Just as I turned back toward the room, a sound floated through the air, a slow, broken melody from a piano. My heart skipped. On the table sat an old electric organ, its wires cut, layers of dust thick upon it. It shouldn't be able to play at all. Yet the music continued, distant, haunting, like someone playing in the dark for no one but themselves. "Who's there?" I called. Only the wind replied. I stepped closer, heart pounding, floorboards creaking under each step. The music stopped. Silence. The oil lamp flickered, then went out. Darkness swallowed everything. I could hear my own breathing, fast, shallow. And then, right behind me, a whisper, so faint it brushed my ear. Greater than, "Don't stay here." I spun around, flashlight shaking in my hand. No one, only the curtain swaying softly, as if someone had just passed by. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw a pale figure standing outside the window, white and blurred in the fog, its face impossible to make out. The next morning, I went down to the nearby village to ask the elders. Whenever I mentioned the house on the Pine Hill, people averted their eyes. Some only gave short, clipped answers. Greater than that place, there's the spirit of a young girl. That house once buried someone. I froze. Buried someone? An old woman spoke, her voice raspy. Greater than, she was the daughter of the original owner. Out of jealousy, the family locked her inside a wooden chest and buried her right under the house. Everyone who stays there hears her music, her crying, I didn't believe it, but later that afternoon, when I returned to the house and stepped inside, the girl's photo was still hanging on the wall, only now. Strangely, her eyes looked wetter than yesterday. On the second night, I decided to find out for myself whether it was real or just rumor. I placed the oil lamp in the center of the room and spoke aloud. Greater than, if someone really is here, I only wish for peace while I stay. I won't harm you. Outside, the wind rose, the windows rattled violently. The music returned, this time louder, aching, like the cry of someone trapped between two worlds. My hand trembled as I lifted the lamp. Its flickering light danced across the wall, and there, stretched out, was the shadow of a girl with loose hair, dressed in white, tilting her head as she stared at me. I stepped closer, my voice breaking. Greater than, who are you? The shadow gave no answer. She only raised a hand and pointed to the floor. Right there, the tiles were slightly cracked, as if they had once been dug up and then filled again. A chill shot up my spine. I stumbled back, stammering. Greater than, what do you want me to do? The music stopped. A cold gust swept through. And in that instant, I heard a faint sob right beside my ear, so close it felt like someone was leaning over my shoulder, whispering through tears. Greater than, find me. When I came to, the lamp had gone out. The room was swallowed in darkness. Outside, dawn had broken, the fog still thick. I wondered, had I only dreamed it? But when I looked down at the floor, I saw a handprint pressed into the thin layer of dust, small, damp, as if someone had just touched it and vanished. I sat in silence for a long time, my chest heavy. From that moment on, I knew this wasn't just a story. That house truly had someone living in it, only that someone no longer belonged to this world. The next morning, I went to the market early. The sky over Dalat was gray, fog blanketing the slope in a dim haze. The women at the stalls kept glancing at me strangely when I mentioned that I was staying at the house on the Pine Hill. They fell silent, then quietly walked away. An old man selling sweet potatoes leaned closer and whispered, Greater than, if you're staying there, don't touch that piano. Anyone who lays a finger on its keys ends up cursed. I asked him what he meant, but he only sighed. Greater than, whatever lives in that house, doesn't want to be disturbed. I said nothing. In my head, the sound of last night's melody still lingered, sorrowful, trembling, like a woman crying in the rain. By late afternoon, I returned. The house was silent, save for the wind whistling through the cracks of the door. I lit the oil lamp, straightened up the scattered items, and sat at the desk. The dim light fell on the portrait of the girl in white still hanging on the wall. This time, I noticed something. Her eyes seemed to look downward, toward the floor, the very same spot where the shadow had pointed the night before. I wondered, could there really be something beneath? I circled the room, tapping the floor with a small spade. In the center of the room, the sound changed, hollow, like there was an empty space below. Maybe the foundation's weak, I murmured. Yet unease crept up my spine. I set the spade down, added more oil to the lamp, and began taking notes in my journal. Outside, fog rolled in again, the pines whispered, dogs barked in the distance, then silence. Around midnight, the music returned. But this time, it didn't come from the old organ. It rose from beneath the floor. The notes were fractured, broken, as if someone was trying to play but their trembling fingers kept slipping. I sat upright, heart pounding. Greater than, is that you? What are you trying to tell me? The music stopped. Then, through the wind, came a faint sob, so soft yet sharp enough to freeze the blood in my veins. Greater than, so cold? My lips trembled. Greater than, where are you? No reply, only the groan of the wind twisting through the roof beams, long and mournful. Like a lament. I lifted the oil lamp and followed the sound. The light flickered across the floor, and there, faintly visible, were wet footprints, bare, small, glistening on the tiles as though someone had just walked past. I stopped before the old organ. Dust covered its surface. The wires were severed, impossible for it to work. But when I reached out and gently pressed one key, it rang, ting, clear, resonant, and ice-cold. I pulled my hand back. Suddenly, the key next to the one I had touched pressed down on its own. Then another. And then an entire slow melody began to play, as if someone were seated there, striking notes out of thin air. Greater than, who are you? What do you want me to do? The music stopped. The window burst open and the wind swept in, whipping the curtain wildly. The oil lamp wavered, nearly going out. Then I saw it. The girl's portrait on the wall fell. The glass frame shattered, and the photo rolled onto the floor. On the back of the picture, a line of ink had blurred into words. Greater than, don't let them bury me again. My hands shook as I set the photo on the table. Greater than, bury, again? What does that mean? I murmured. There was no reply, only the wind. I decided that the next morning I would go down to the village to ask about the girl in the photo. But that night, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard footsteps circling the house. The floorboards creaked, fabric brushed against the walls. Sometimes, right beside my ear, a voice whispered like a breath. Greater than, don't go, stay with me. I bolted upright, heart pounding. The oil lamp had gone out without me noticing. The room sunk in darkness. Yet I could still make out the faint silhouette of someone sitting at the piano, long hair, thin back, hands gliding over the keys, each note falling like a tear. I called softly. Greater than, are you the girl buried under this house? She didn't answer. She played a few more notes, then turned. Her face was pale, her eyes deep and hollow, staring straight at me. I wanted to run, but my legs wouldn't move. A weak voice filled the air. Greater than, I don't want to harm anyone. I just want to be remembered. My own voice trembled. Greater than, what's your name? No answer. She simply raised a finger to her lips, a gesture for silence, then vanished like mist dissolving into wind. When I finally caught my breath, my heart was still racing. I looked down at the spot where she had sat. Droplets of water trailed across the floorboards, leading directly to the cracked patch in the center of the room. I brought the lamp closer. Beneath the crack, the earth had sunk slightly, revealing a narrow gap. Something inside glimmered like metal. I bent down, trying to see clearly. It was a hairpin. Silver, delicately engraved with a floral pattern, coated in soil and dust. I picked it up and wiped it clean. On the inside, a single letter was etched, T. I slipped it into my pocket, an uncanny feeling stirring inside me, as if she wanted me to uncover something hidden. Outside, the wind rose again. The ghostly music drifted far away, mingling with the whisper of the pines, like voices speaking softly in the cold night. Greater than, find me. I sat down, clutching the hairpin tight, staring at the fog beyond the doorway. And in that mist, I saw the faint outline of a girl in white, standing still, lifting her hand in a gentle wave. I knew then, this was only the beginning. I don't remember exactly when I fell asleep. I only know that in my restless dreams I heard the piano, soft, mournful, and distant, as if from another place. Then I found myself standing inside the house. But everything was brighter. The walls were clean, the furniture polished, lamps glowing warm gold. Outside, the sky was clear and birds sang in the pines. A young woman stepped out from the kitchen. She wore a white owl dye, her hair falling gently over her shoulders, her face delicate, her dark eyes sad, gentle but tired. She smiled at me, her voice light as mist. Greater than, you're the new one here, aren't you? I nodded. Greater than, yes, I'm renting this house. She lowered her head slightly. Greater than, I know. It's been so long since anyone stayed. I once lived here. I looked around. The house in my dream was nothing like reality. It was warm, bright, scented with jasmine. Greater than, what's your name? She gazed out the window. Greater than, my name is Thou. The name jolted me. I remembered the silver hairpin etched with the letter T in my coat pocket in the real world. Greater than, you're thou? You were buried here? She didn't answer. The smile faded from her lips. She turned and walked slowly toward the door. I followed. On the porch, the wind stirred the pine branches. She stopped and pointed at the ground. At her feet stood a large, dark wooden chest with a rusty iron lock. Greater than, my father locked me here. Greater than, why? Her voice trembled. Greater than, because I loved a servant in the house. They said I shamed the family. They locked me in. I cried. I begged, but no one opened it. She knelt down, her trembling hand stroking the chest. Greater than, I died here. But I don't hate. I'm only afraid of being forgotten. I knelt beside her, my throat tight. Greater than, I won't let you be forgotten. She lifted her eyes, tears glimmering. Greater than, promise me. Promise you won't abandon me. Greater than, I promise. She smiled, a smile as light as clouds. Then her form began to fade. Greater than, thank you. You're the first to hear me speak. I reached out, panicked. Greater than, wait, I have to help you out of here. But she only shook her head. Greater than, no one can dig me out. Just remember, don't let them bury me again. Her voice dissolved into the wind. Everything around me shuddered, then went black. I woke with a start. My collar was soaked with sweat. The oil lamp still flickered faintly. Outside, fog hung heavy. I sat up, feeling as if I had just lived her life. Greater than, thou, I whispered her name, my heart aching. Suddenly, something clinked, came, onto the floor. I turned. The silver hairpin lay in the middle of the room where I had set the oil lamp. I remembered clearly. I had put it in my pocket. It couldn't have fallen out. I bent down to pick it up. The hairpin was icy cold, heavy, as if just pulled from water. And the moment I held it, the piano began to play. No longer broken, no longer scattered. This time it was a complete piece. Gentle, sorrowful, like a farewell. I sat still, listening until the final note faded. When it ended, even the wind outside stopped. The house felt strangely calm. I added more oil to the lamp and looked out the window. On the hillside, white fog floated, moonlight spilling in silver beams. And within that mist, the girl in white stood. She nodded gently to me, then turned and walked slowly into the pines. I stood frozen. All my fear melted away, leaving only a deep, quiet sorrow. Greater than, go in peace. Thou, I murmured. A breeze drifted through, carrying a faint scent of jasmine. The next morning, when I stepped outside, I saw the earth in front of the porch freshly disturbed, as if someone had been digging. I approached and found a small, old ring buried beneath. Inside were engraved the letters T and N. I understood. N was the man she had loved. I placed the ring on the table beside her photograph. From that day, the piano never played again. The house stayed old, stayed cold, but strangely, it no longer felt haunted. Only the wind passed through the pines, soft and sad, like a farewell. I stayed in that house for a few more months, writing down everything I had experienced. Sometimes, as I wrote, the oil lamp would glow a little brighter, as if someone were reading with me. I would smile and whisper, "Greater than, you can read this, can't you, thou?" A light breeze would turn the page. I knew she was still there, but now, she was no longer a fear. She was a memory, the soul of the house, still guarding the place she had once lived. When I left Dalat, I locked the door and posted a note on the porch. Greater than, please do not destroy this house. Inside, someone is still dreaming. Even now, as I tell this story, I remember every sound, every gust of wind, every glance from that photograph. If anyone asks whether I believe in ghosts, I only smile. I don't believe in monsters or demons. But I do believe in pain too deep to be forgotten. 3 years after I left Dalat, the house on the hill still stood there, silent among the wind-worn pines. People said it was haunted, that no one dared approach. Yet some claimed that at night, a faint light still flickered inside, though no one had rented it again. I hadn't planned to return, but that day, a strange phone call stopped my heart. A middle-aged man's voice, trembling slightly. Greater than, Dr. Kang? This is Fuck. I just rented the house on the Pine Hill. But, something's wrong. For the past few nights, I've seen someone standing outside the window, staring in. I froze. Greater than, you said someone's looking in? Greater than, I don't know who. Looked like a figure in white. Long hair. At first I thought it was a thief. But when I looked closer, the shape was faint. Its feet weren't touching the ground. Through the phone, I could hear his quick breaths, and the hiss of wind. Greater than, are you alone there? Greater than, yes, alone. I set up a small recording studio inside. This afternoon I even heard a piano playing. But I don't have any instrument at all. Doctor? I was silent for a moment. A coldness crept from my collar down my spine. Greater than, fuck, if you can. Leave that place. Greater than, I was planning to. But tonight I still have some equipment to pack. Doctor, could you come up here? I'm scared. I glanced at the clock, past 10 p.m. outside my window. Dalat lay buried in fog. I sighed, put on my coat, grabbed a flashlight, and drove toward the familiar hill. The old road hadn't changed. Pines still whispered, white mist thickened, the smell of damp earth and rotting leaves clung to the air. I stopped in front of the house. The door was ajar, a weak light glowing inside. Greater than, fuck? I called out. No answer. I stepped in. The floorboards creaked beneath my feet. The house was the same, except for a few audio devices, speakers, microphones, a laptop. An oil lamp sat on the table. But strangely, it wasn't my old lamp, it was brand new. I looked around and headed toward the living room. Suddenly, footsteps upstairs, soft, slow, then stopping. Greater than, fuck? Are you up there? No reply. I shone my flashlight up the stairs. The beam slid over the wooden steps, stopping at the top, where a single wet footprint pointed downward. My heart thudded. Then a small voice, like a whisper by my ear. Greater than, you've come back. I spun around, no one there. Only the wind moving the curtain. The door upstairs creaked open. I climbed the steps, each board moaning like a sob. At the top, the room glowed faintly, the curtain stirred, and someone stood by the window. A thin figure, long hair, dressed in white. I froze. Greater than, thou. The figure turned, but it wasn't the girl I had seen in my dreams. Her face was ghost white, eyes sunken and black, lips pale, her head tilted at an unnatural angle. She looked at me and smiled, crooked. Greater than, you came back? I stepped back. Greater than, who are you? Greater than, I've been here a long time. But you left. Did you forget me? Her voice was like wind, mingled with sobs. I shook my head, heart pounding. Greater than, no, you're not thou. Thou is gone. She laughed, a shrill, broken sound. Greater than, no one leaves this house. The moment her laughter stopped, the lights went out, the room drowned in thick darkness. Footsteps ran in circles around me, but I saw no one. Greater than, Dr. Kang, Fuck's voice came from downstairs, shaking. What are you doing up there? Come down now. I turned, flashlight trembling on the stairwell. Fuck stood below, face pale, phone in hand. I rushed down. Greater than, did you see anything up there? Fuck stammered. Greater than, I saw the shadow behind you, it had no face? We stood frozen, speechless. Then suddenly, from upstairs, the organ began to play. The same folk melody from years ago. Fuck cried out, dropping his phone. Greater than, I swear I didn't turn anything on. I don't even have a piano. I looked up at the stairs. The flashlight shook, its beam striking the peeling wall, where a bloody handprint was smeared deep into the plaster. The air was icy, biting into my skin. I grabbed Fuck by the arm. Greater than, go, now. We ran down the hill, gasping for breath. When we reached the main road, Fuck collapsed, sobbing. Greater than, I'm never going back. That house, something there doesn't want anyone to stay. I said nothing, staring at the pine hill swallowed in white mist. From a distance, the light inside the house flicked on again. And in that dim glow, a figure clearly stood at the window, looking out. Fuck and I ran until we were far from the house. Our breathing was still ragged, cold sweat soaking through our shirts. Fuck was trembling, his face chalk white. Greater than, I'm not going back. Doctor, tonight, I saw it clearly, someone standing at the window, smiling at me. I gripped his shoulders, trying to steady him. Greater than, calm down. We have to understand what's happening. If it's really thou, then she hasn't moved on. If it's something else, then we need to find out what. Fuck panted, staring at me wide-eyed. Greater than, doctor, you actually believe in ghosts? I stayed silent. I had thought thou was freed, but the light shining tonight told me something was still unfinished. The next morning, I returned to the pine hill. The air was cold, the fog as thick as smoke. The path to the house was soaked, dotted with a few footprints. The wooden door was ajar. As if waiting, I took a deep breath and pushed gently. The hinges screamed as it opened. Inside, everything was the same, except for one thing. The center of the living room floor had sunken slightly, exposing a patch of dark soil. I knelt down. The earth had been freshly dug, shovel marks still wet. Beneath, something metallic glimmered. I brushed aside more dirt. It was an old piano string, rusty and coiled. The moment I touched it, a asterisk thump echoed behind me, like a door closing. I spun around. No one there. I forced a laugh. Greater than, must be the wind. But before I could stand, the piano began to play. Not loud, just a few broken notes, like someone practicing. The sound came from under the floor where I was kneeling. Greater than, that's impossible. I pressed my ear to the floor, listening closer, deep notes, mournful, laced with a faint scraping, like a hand dragging over strings. I sprang up, backing away, cold sweat beading on my forehead. Just then, Fuck appeared in the doorway, flashlight in hand. Greater than, doctor, I'm terrified. I couldn't sleep last night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw someone standing by my bed. I pointed at the floor. Greater than, look, there's music under here. Fuck crouched, frowning. Greater than, how could a piano be under the ground? I grabbed a small spade from the corner and started digging. The earth was loose, soft, as if someone had touched it recently. After a few inches, the spade hit something solid. I scraped away more dirt. A small wooden box emerged. Old, muddy. Fuck stepped back, swallowing hard. Greater than, don't open it. Doctor, what if? I looked at him, then lifted the lid. Inside were strands of old piano wire, a photograph, and a yellowed piece of paper. The photo showed a girl in a white-out dye standing beside an organ. Her face was gentle, her eyes deep with sadness. Below it was written, Greater than, thou 1967. I picked up the paper. The handwriting was jagged. Greater than, if anyone finds this, please don't destroy the piano. The music is my message. I'm still here. Fuck snatched the paper. Reading it, his face went pale. Greater than, my God. Doctor, this is the woman you told me about? I nodded, clutching the note. Greater than, it's her. But why has someone already dug this up? Someone else tried to find it. Fuck glanced around, voice shaking. Greater than, you mean, someone besides us has been in here? I was about to answer when a asterisk click came from the inner room. The door swung open on its own, though there was no wind. I swept the flashlight inside. On the wall where thou's picture had once hung, a new line of red appeared. Greater than, give my music back to me. Fuck screamed. Greater than, who wrote that? I swear it wasn't there yesterday. I shone the beam on the red letters. They were wet, dripping to the floor. Not paint, blood. Before we could react, the piano burst into sound again. This time louder, wild, furious. The whole house shook, the window panes rattling. Fuck clutched his ears, shouting. Greater than, stop it. Please, I didn't mean to. I held the wooden box and shouted back. Greater than, thou, if you're here, listen to me, I'll protect the piano. No one will destroy it. The music cut off, silence fell heavy. Only my heartbeat and Fuck's ragged breaths filled the air. Moments later, the flashlight died. In the darkness, footsteps descended softly from the upper floor. Fuck gripped my hand, trembling. Greater than, who's there? A figure in white appeared at the staircase, moving slowly, step by step. Moonlight spilled through the door, landing on her face. Thou. She stood still, her sad eyes fixed on me. Greater than, you promised. Her voice was soft, heavy as mist. Greater than, I keep my promise. But you must rest now. Thou. She shook her head, tears streaming down her cheeks. Greater than, I can't. They're still here, they haven't left. Greater than, they? Who? She stayed silent, then pointed behind me. I turned. The door behind us slammed shut. And on the wall, shadow after shadow appeared, black, faceless, formless. I turned around. The room was freezing. On the damp wall, faint shapes began to appear, dark as smoke. Faceless, formless, thin figures clinging to the plaster. Warped and trembling. Fuck was shaking uncontrollably, his voice cracking. Greater than, dear God. Doctor, what are those things? I swallowed hard, forcing myself to stay calm. Greater than, I don't know, but it feels like they're watching us. The house fell dead silent, save for the wind whistling through the cracks. One of the shadows moved, its head tilted to one side, then slowly peeled away from the wall and dropped to the floor with a dull thud. Fuck screamed, stumbling backward, nearly hitting the wall. The dark figure rose, crawling toward me. It had no eyes, no mouth, only a human outline, thick and glistening like spilled ink. I stepped back, gripping the flashlight tightly. Greater than, if you're human, speak. No answer. Only a rasping breath, hoarse and hollow, followed by a whisper that seemed to come from within the wall itself. Greater than, give us back the music? My blood ran cold. Greater than, who are you? Another shadow stirred, its voice dragging, each word heavy and broken. Greater than, the ones who were buried? Fuck grabbed my arm, trembling violently. Greater than, oh God. Doctor, you mean, there were others killed here? I swept the flashlight across the room. Near the window, the wall had cracked open, exposing crumbled bricks, and beneath them, a patch of white bone. I froze. Greater than, no, it can't be. Fuck stammered, his mouth stiff. Greater than, doctor, let's get out of here. Please, I can't take this anymore. But then, the piano began to play again. This time, louder, clearer than ever. The entire house trembled as though 100 strings were vibrating at once. The music surged, screaming like voices crying in agony. Chunks of plaster fell, dust swirling through the air. Amid the chaotic notes, I heard a woman's voice, thous. Greater than, they buried me, and the man I loved, and another girl who knew. I was never alone, but none of us could rest. My throat tightened. Greater than, thou, I understand now, they didn't just kill you. They murdered the others to hide their sins. A white figure materialized in the center of the room. She stood there, drenched out dye clinging to her body, hair soaked, eyes heavy with sorrow, staring at the cracked wall. Greater than, you see now, they're there. Behind that wall. A sharp crack split the air. A section of wall collapsed, revealing 3 sets of remains stacked on top of one another. Fuck dropped to his knees, color draining from his face. I knelt closer, One of the skeletons still wore a silver bracelet engraved with the letters T and N. I clenched my fists, my heart twisting. Greater than, it's him, the man you loved? Thou nodded, tears streaming down her face. Greater than, they killed him, said he ran away. I cried, I searched, and they locked me up. I could still hear him calling, beneath the floor. She reached out, touching the piano strings inside the wooden box I held. Greater than, the music, it's his voice. Every time someone comes, he plays, hoping they'll listen, but everyone runs away. I looked at her, voice trembling. Greater than, I won't. I'll help you both find peace. She smiled softly. Greater than, promise me. Greater than, I promise. The moment those words left my mouth, the wind in the room stopped. The shadows on the walls froze, then slowly dissolved, turning into thin wisps of smoke drifting upward. Thou stepped forward and took my hand. Her touch was icy, yet gentle. Greater than, thank you. They've waited so long. She turned toward the three skeletons and whispered tenderly. Greater than, let's go. My love. Her body shimmered, fading into the silvery mist streaming through the window. The music softened, then disappeared entirely. The house fell quiet. Fuck and I stood motionless. No more weeping, no more music, only the smell of damp earth and the whisper of the pine wind. Fuck finally spoke, voice trembling. Greater than, doctor, we need to tell the authorities about the bodies? I nodded. Greater than, yes, she led us to them. Now they can finally rest. The next day, the local police arrived and excavated the fallen wall. They confirmed 3 sets of remains, 1 male, 2 female, buried deep beneath the foundation. On one wrist, the silver bracelet still read T and N. Old records later revealed that in 1967, the family who once lived there vanished during wartime chaos. The case was forgotten. That night, when I returned to the house for the last time, everything was still. Fog blanketed the hill. The pines whispered faintly, like distant voices. On the table where I had left the music box lay a single thin silver string, glinting under the moonlight. I picked it up and whispered, smiling faintly. Greater than, rest in peace. Thou. Outside, the wind blew softly. And through the swaying pines, I heard a faint melody, gentle, sorrowful, but warm. It was an early winter morning. Thick clouds blanketed the sky, and the steep path up the hill was slick with dew. A tall man in a black trench coat, carrying a wooden briefcase, walked slowly upward. His name was *tin*, an investor who had come to buy the old house to turn it into a homestay. When the car stopped at the base of the slope, the driver glanced around nervously. Greater than, Mr. Tin, they say this place is haunted. Tin chuckled, his tone confident. Greater than, ghosts are just stories. I'm here for business, not superstition. Greater than, but people died here. You know, 3, maybe 4 of them. Greater than, people die everywhere. Lots full of graves hidden in the pine forests. He said it casually, opened the car door, and stepped out. His shoes crunched on the dry leaves. Above, the old house stood silent, moss covering its walls, wooden door sagging. A gust of cold wind passed, carrying the faint creak of something that almost sounded like a moan. Tin walked around the yard. Grass grew up to his knees. The windows shook in the wind, sighing like someone breathing. He looked around and muttered. Greater than, old, sure, but the view's perfect. Clean this up a bit and it'll be a great homestay. He took out his phone and started recording, his voice cheerful. Greater than, here it is, the Pine Hill House. Future luxury retreat for tourists. I'll call it Villa Whisper, *. The wind surged. The phone camera trembled. Behind him, a pale figure flashed across the screen, but he didn't notice. He opened the door and stepped inside. The air was thick with damp and mold. On the table in the center of the room was a faint circular mark, the place where Dr. Kang's music box had once sat. He reached out to touch it, It was icy cold. A draft slipped through the cracks, pushing the door slightly with a soft creak. Greater than, hello? Anyone here? No answer. Only a faint scratching, like fingernails grazing the wall. He looked around, then laughed nervously. Greater than, just the wind. Old wooden houses always make weird sounds. Evening came quickly. Fog rolled down from the pines, thick and white, wrapping around the house. Tin lit a small fire and cooked instant noodles, eating right there in the living room. While he ate, he heard faint thuds on the roof. Then something dropped outside the porch. He grabbed his flashlight and stepped out. Nothing, only fallen pine branches scattered on the ground. Greater than, see? No ghosts, just the trees. He turned back and closed the door, but *PFFT. The oil lamp on the table went out. The entire house sank into darkness. Greater than, what the hell? He fumbled for his lighter. As the flame flickered, a dim glow appeared in the corner, as if someone else was holding a lantern. Greater than, who's there? No reply. The light drifted slowly, illuminating the cracked wall in the corner, and on it, faint words appeared, drawn in charcoal. Greater than, do not wake us. Tin stumbled back, heart pounding. Greater than, who wrote this? He flicked the light brighter, the writing vanished. The wall was plain and white. Greater than, must be my eyes, too tired. He sat down, trying to steady his breath, but when he closed his eyes, a soft melody echoed in his head, a piano, mournful and distant. The sound was coming from upstairs. Greater than, there's no one up there. He grabbed the flashlight and climbed the wooden stairs. Each step creaked under his weight. The music grew clearer. At the top, he found an old organ covered in dust. The keys were trembling. One in the center pressed itself down, holding a single long note. He stepped closer and gently touched it. Suddenly, the keyboard snapped down with a loud clang. In silence, the air thickened. From behind him came a quiet sigh, close enough to feel on his neck. Greater than, don't stay here. He spun around. No one there. Only his own shadow, warped and shaking on the wall in the flickering light. Tin took a deep breath and forced a smile. Greater than, all right then, if this is your house, I'll leave tomorrow. He said it half-jokingly, but doubt flickered in his eyes. That night, he spread a blanket on the floor, trying to sleep. Outside, the wind through the pines wailed like someone sobbing. Sometime past midnight, he woke suddenly. Someone was sitting beside him. A girl in a white dye, hair covering half her face, was gently stroking the organ strings with thin, ghostly fingers. Greater than, you promised you wouldn't wake us again, didn't you? Tin's mouth opened, but no sound came out. She lifted her head. Her eyes were hollow, black pits with no end. The light flickered, wind burst through the window, carrying the faint scent of incense. The piano began to play once more, slow, sorrowful, and chillingly alive. The wind from the hill blew cold, and fog blanketed the narrow trail in white. Inside the old house, Tin sat huddled by the fire, his face still pale. The girl in the white dress from last night, had she been real? Or just a hallucination from exhaustion? He tried to convince himself it was the latter, then laughed weakly. Greater than, I'm not the kind of man who scares at ghost stories. But deep inside, the unease lingered. Outside, the pine forest was black and endless, the wind whispering through the branches like murmuring voices. That morning, Tin went down to the market at the foot of the hill to buy some supplies to fix up the house. The locals looked at him with wary eyes. An old woman selling vegetables leaned closer and asked quietly, Greater than, you're staying at the house up on the hill, aren't you? Greater than, yes, ma'am, just renting it for now, planning to turn it into a guest house. She shook her head slowly, lowering her voice. Greater than, you should leave soon. Everyone who's stayed there says they hear the piano at night. Some even saw *Miss Thou* sitting by the window. hair wet, singing softly. Tin frowned. Greater than, who's thou? Greater than, the lady who owned the house long ago. She's been dead for years. They say her own family killed her, buried her beneath the floor. A chill ran down his spine. He forced a smile. Greater than, I don't believe in ghosts. Ma'am. Greater than, believe or not, just don't stay there on a full moon. She turned away, leaving him standing alone in the windy market square, her warning echoing in his ears. By late afternoon, he returned to the house carrying wooden planks to patch the roof. The fog rolled in again, thick and cold, dampening his hair. As he hammered, he muttered to himself. Greater than, ghosts, huh? Probably just rumors to scare people off buying the land. But suddenly, clank, the hammer slipped from his hand and hit the floor. Right beside his ear came a soft sigh, close enough to feel the breath. Greater than, you'll regret it. He spun around, no one there. Only the curtain swaying gently. And on the wall, a dark wet stain slowly spreading downward. Thick and red like blood. He stepped back, trembling. Greater than, no, that's impossible. The stain stretched, taking shape, 5 long fingers pressing deep into the wall, leaving claw marks. Then, faintly, the piano began to play again, slow, deliberate, from upstairs. Holding his breath, Tin climbed the staircase one step at a time. The old organ sat where it always had, covered in dust. But the keys were moving on their own, one note after another. Deliberate and slow. Greater than, who's up here? No answer. He approached the instrument and touched its frame. It was ice cold. Then, crack, one of the keys snapped in half. Inside the crack, something small gleamed, a folded piece of paper stained with dried blood. Hands shaking, he opened it. The writing was faint, the ink smeared. Greater than, if you still hear the music, it means they haven't gone. His heartbeat pounded like thunder. Then, from below, came the sound of footsteps, slow, dragging, heavy. He froze. A figure stood at the bottom of the stairs. Slender, hunched, hair hanging over the face, white dress dripping wet. She stood there, silent, staring up at him. Greater than, who are you? Greater than, I once lived here. Greater than, thou? She didn't answer. Instead, she turned and walked slowly toward the last room at the end of the hallway. The door creaked open by itself. Tin wanted to run, but his legs wouldn't move. The air shifted, the fire went out, the entire house filled with icy wind. A whisper brushed against his ear. Greater than, don't open that room, if you still want to live. Every hair on his body stood on end. He shouted hoarsely. Greater than, what do you want from me? I haven't done anything. The voice came again, trembling, echoing from within the walls. Greater than, you've touched the curse? Then came a cracking sound. The wall beside him split open, dust falling like ash. And inside the crack, an eye asterisk appeared. Black, wet, unblinking, staring straight at him. Tin screamed and fell backward, flashlight jerking wildly. The crack sealed itself. Silence returned. The piano stopped. When he opened his eyes again, it was morning. He was lying on the floor, clothes covered in dust, body sore and stiff. Maybe it had been a nightmare. But the broken piano key was still there. The blood-stained note lay on the table. Outside, fog smothered the hill. Through it, a figure stood below, an old man with silver hair, wearing a worn wool coat, leaning on a bamboo cane. Tin stepped out, calling. Greater than, sir, are you looking for someone? The old man turned, his eyes dark and sunken. His voice was low, raspy. Greater than, I'm looking for the one who lives among the dead. Tin froze, throat dry. Greater than, what do you mean? The old man's gaze didn't waver. Greater than, if you want to keep your peace, don't listen to the piano tonight. The morning fog was thick as smoke. Tin stepped out of the house and walked down the hill. The old man from the night before was still there, standing beneath a pine tree, quietly gazing at the house as though waiting for someone. Tin approached and spoke softly. "Greater than, sir, do you live around here?" The old man turned. A faint smile lingered on his lips, his clouded eyes deep and distant. "Greater than, I've been here a long time. Longer than that house has stood. Greater than, then, you must know what happened there. Why does everyone avoid it?" He looked down, sighing. "Greater than, because they're afraid. Someone in that house has never found peace." "Greater than, never found peace? What do you mean?" "Greater than, 3 people were buried in the walls. One was locked alive inside a chest. You've heard that story, haven't you?" Tin nodded, voice low. "Greater than, I have, but I thought it was just a rumor." The old man met his eyes and said slowly, "Greater than, it's no rumor. I was the one who buried them." The wind swept through the pines, moaning like distant cries. Tin froze, his spine turning to ice. "Greater than, what did you just say?" "Greater than, it's true. Back then, I was a servant for Counselor Du, Thou's father. The family was wealthy, but their hearts were cruel." He took a long breath, his eyes clouded with memory. "Greater than, Thou fell in love with a poor musician. Her father forbade it, but she kept meeting him in secret. One night, the counselor caught them. In his rage, he had the boy beaten to death. Thou screamed and begged, but they locked her in her room. By morning, they said she had escaped, but I knew she hadn't." "Greater than, what do you mean?" "Greater than, I heard crying from inside the wall. They buried her alive beneath the living room floor, right where you've been sleeping." Tin's fists clenched, his face pale. "Greater than, dear God. Greater than, I knew what they'd done, but it was wartime, no one dared speak. So I left, moved up here to the hill, and lit incense for her soul every full moon." Tin turned toward the distant house, its outline veiled in drifting mist. "Greater than, so, the music last night, was it thou?" "Greater than, yes, she played beautifully. When she was sad, she'd sit by the window and play Gamingua *, sorrowful tune. Every time you hear it now, it means she's remembering the one she loved." A shiver went through Tin. "Greater than, does she harm anyone?" "Greater than, no, she's never hurt a soul. She only wants people to remember how she died. But if anyone breaks the walls or disturbs the floor, she becomes furious, because beneath it still lies the curse." They stood silent for a long while. The wind whistled through the pines like a sigh. "Greater than, sir," Tin asked quietly, "if I wanted to help her find peace, what should I do?" The old man's eyes filled with sorrow. "Greater than, it won't be easy. You're not the first to ask. There was a doctor once, he stayed here too. Promised to help her, but then, he disappeared." Tin's heart skipped. "Greater than, Dr. Kang?" "Greater than, yes. He came to me 3 years ago. After he found the bones inside the wall. Said he'd free her spirit. Then one day, he vanished. Police searched everywhere. Only found his suitcase down in the valley. There was a handprint on it, dried in blood." A chill crept down Tin's neck. He felt eyes on him from somewhere unseen. "Greater than, if the curse still lingers, how can I break it?" The old man's voice dropped. "Greater than, you can't. Curses don't live in the ground, they live in the hearts of the living. Stay long enough, and you'll hear the music too. Not just one melody, but 4. "Greater than, 4? Greater than, thou, her lover, and 2 servants who were killed to keep the secret. They were all buried together." The wind roared through the trees, the pines wailing like voices in pain. The old man gripped his cane tighter. "Greater than, tonight is the full moon. Don't sleep in that house. If you hear the piano, don't answer it. And don't open your eyes." Tin nodded, though doubt flickered in his chest. He returned to the house, standing in the doorway. Everything was still, silent. Night fell. The full moon hung over the hill, pouring light across the windows and the shadowed pines. Tin lay on the floor, Eyes open, every nerve awake. Then, the piano began. Faint at first, as if from the forest. Then closer, closer, right behind the wall. The melody was slow, mournful, stretching each note. And through the wind came a whisper. Greater than, you promised me, you wouldn't leave me? Tin trembled, clutching the blanket, forcing his eyes shut. The music grew louder, pressing into his skull. Then, crack, a cold hand pressed against his chest. His heart stopped. A woman's voice, soft and broken, whispered, "Greater than, don't go, stay with me." At that moment, from outside came the sound of a cane tapping, thok. Thok. The old man's trembling voice called out, loud and commanding. Greater than, go, thou, release the living, you don't belong to this world anymore. The piano shattered mid-note, collapsing into silence. The air grew lighter, the weight lifted. Tin bolted upright, drenched in sweat. He ran outside and saw the old man standing by the pine tree, gripping his cane, breathing hard. Greater than, sir. The old man smiled faintly. Greater than, I held her back for one night only. You must leave before the moon fades. Greater than, what about you? Greater than, I'll stay. I still owe her an apology. Tin's chest tightened. Moonlight glowed across the old man's wrinkled face, his eyes kind, unbearably sad. Greater than, go now. Son, don't let her call your name again. The wind rose, rustling the pine branches. Tin turned back toward the house one last time. The attic window was half open, its white curtain fluttering softly. And in the moonlight, a girl in a white dress stood there, smiling faintly, her gaze lost somewhere far beyond. After that night, Tin couldn't sleep. The wind from Dalat slipped through the cracks of the window. And the whispering pines outside sounded like someone weeping softly. He sat in the dark, eyes fixed on the old organ lying silent in the middle of the room. Greater than, don't listen to the music, what did he mean by that? He muttered to himself, though what remained inside him was only a vague, gnawing fear. He hadn't seen the girl in white again, but the house stayed bitterly cold, and every night, the walls seemed to sweat, dark streaks sliding down like bleeding wounds. By morning, Tin made up his mind to leave. He packed a few things hastily into an old suitcase. There was nothing in the house worth keeping, just a strange, pressing sense that someone was standing right behind him, watching. He didn't look back. He walked quickly to the door. As he pulled the iron gate closed, a long creak echoed through the fog. There was no wind, the gate swung open by itself. Greater than, stop it, don't try to keep me here. He muttered, climbing into the car. The engine rumbled to life, and the tires rolled slowly along the misty road. The morning sky over Dalat was heavy and dim. Fog blanketed the hills, the winding road twisting like something out of a dream. Tin drove faster, feeling lighter with every turn. But when he stopped at a roadside rest area, his heart nearly jumped. The trunk was slightly open. He clearly remembered locking it. Greater than, must have been the bumps or the wind. He whispered, getting out to check. He lifted the lid, then froze. Inside wasn't his luggage, but another suitcase, smaller, caked in red dirt. Across the lid was a dark, dried handprint. He staggered back, face pale. Greater than, this isn't mine. His trembling fingers unlatched the lock. A foul, metallic stench burst out, choking his breath. Inside lay only a black fabric-covered notebook, damp and stained. On the cover, in shaky handwriting, were the words, Greater than asterisk, Diary of Kang, the Pine Hill House, asterisk. Tin opened it. The first page was filled with jagged writing, but the meaning was clear. Greater than, if you're reading this, it means a failed. Greater than the curse isn't over. Greater than the only way is to return her spirit to the house. Greater than don't burn it, don't destroy it, don't run. Greater than if you try to flee, she will follow you forever. Tin's hands went cold. The name Kang. That was the doctor everyone had mentioned. So, he had faced the same fate. He turned to the final pages. The handwriting grew frantic, smeared as if written in panic. Greater than, night 49. I hear the piano inside my own chest. Greater than I understand now, there's no escape. Greater than if I die, she will choose another. Tin slammed the notebook shut, his fingers trembling. Outside, the fog thickened, and the wind suddenly picked up. The suitcase snapped closed with a thunderous bang. He spun around. No one was there. Only the faint whisper of the wind, yet within it, a voice called softly. Greater than, you're not done yet, come back. Tin leapt into the car, slammed the door, and hit the gas. The tires screamed, skidding down the slope. But after a few hundred meters, the fuel gauge dropped to 0, and the speedometer flickered. The car sputtered, then died in the middle of the hill. Greater than, oh, come on, not now. He got out, lifted the hood, everything looked fine. Then, from the trunk, came a sound. Thud, thud, thud. Like someone knocking from inside. He froze. Cold sweat ran down his neck. The knocking grew faster, then stopped. A frail voice drifted out, soft as breath. Greater than, you can't leave the hill. He stumbled backward, tripping over a rock. The suitcase lid slowly lifted, just enough for him to see a pair of hollow black eyes staring up at him. Tin screamed and bolted, sprinting down the foggy road, leaving the car behind. Behind him, the haunting notes of an organ rose again, faint, sorrowful, and unrelenting, woven into the sound of the pines. He ran until his lungs burned, collapsing beside a mossy rock. The wind carried a faint scent of incense and jasmine. When he looked up, through the drifting fog, he saw it. The old house again, half hidden among the trees. Greater than, no, that's impossible. I came back? He gasped for air, staring at the familiar doorway. The white curtain at the entrance fluttered gently, as if someone were waiting inside. The piano began once more, soft, trembling, mournful. He closed his eyes and whispered. Greater than, fine, I understand. Greater than you want me to come back, don't you? The door opened slowly, without a sound. Mist poured in, icy and thick. Tin stepped inside, still gripping the blood-soaked diary of Dr. Kang in his hand. Fog blanketed the entire house. Tin stood in the middle of the living room, still clutching the blood-stained diary. Everything looked exactly as it had the day he left, the dust, the dampness, the faint sour smell of rotting wood. Only the air was different, heavier, thicker, as if hundreds of unseen eyes were watching. Greater than, I'm back. What do you want from me now? His voice trembled, echoing through the cold room. In the corner, the old organ buzzed faintly, then fell silent. Moments later, slow, sorrowful notes began to rise, a melody like someone quietly sobbing in the dark. Greater than, stop playing, please. I can't take this anymore. The music stopped. The window burst open, wind howling in, whipping the white curtains like restless spirits. Through the drifting fog, a figure appeared, the girl in the white dress. Her face was pale, her eyes deep and hollow, hair wet and clinging to her neck. She looked at him silently for a long time before her lips moved, barely forming the words. Greater than, why did you come back? Tin stood frozen. Greater than, I didn't mean to. I found Dr. Kang's journal. He said I had to bring you back here. She lowered her head, her voice fragile. Greater than, he promised, but he couldn't keep it. Just like you. Greater than, promise? What promise? Greater than, to help me leave this place. Tin swallowed hard, his heartbeat pounding in his ears. Greater than, you were really buried here? Greater than, right beneath the floor, right under your feet. He flinched, the beam of his flashlight shaking as it swept across the floor. A long crack ran through the old tiles, black liquid seeping out, reeking of decay. Greater than, I I just want to help you. Greater than, help me? Do you even know how? Greater than, no, but I'll try. She lifted her head. In her black eyes flickered a strange, cold light. Greater than, if you want me to be free, someone has to take my place. Greater than a living soul must lie where I lay. Tin froze. The air turned to ice around him. Greater than, you mean, I have to die? Greater than, you've already heard the music. That means you've been chosen. Outside, the wind raged, windows slamming against their frames. The table lamp flickered violently, the girl's figure fading in and out of the light. Tin stumbled backward, shouting in terror. Greater than, no, I didn't do anything, I just rented the house. Greater than, everyone says that. She stepped forward, dragging her bare, mud-stained feet. Each step made the floor tremble. Then, the music started again, two melodies intertwining. One sorrowful, one sharp and shrill, like a call from the dead. Tin clutched his head, screaming. Greater than, stop it. Please, I can't take it anymore. The girl halted, her expression softened into grief. Greater than, they locked me in a wooden chest. Right here in this room. Greater than my father, for money, stuffed a cloth in my mouth and buried me while I was still breathing. Greater than I only wanted someone to hear me. Her voice cracked, fading like mist. Greater than, now you've heard. Greater than, so you're the one who must remember. Tears streamed down Tin's face. Greater than, please, forgive me. Greater than, I no longer have the power to forgive. Then, a rough, trembling voice came from the doorway. Greater than, thou, don't do this. Tin turned, the old man from before stood there, his body half shrouded in fog. But his form was fading, half transparent, half dissolved into air. Greater than, you're dead, aren't you? He nodded slowly. Greater than, she chose me once. Too, I ran. Greater than, now it's time to repay what I owe. He stepped between them, looking tenderly at the girl. Greater than, thou, people did you wrong, but don't let vengeance chain you here forever. She shook her head, tears streaming down her face. Greater than, I don't want to stay here anymore. Greater than, then come with me. Don't drag another into your grief. She fell silent. The wind stopped. The music faded. A soft white light spread from their bodies, wrapping around them until both dissolved into it. The faint scent of jasmine filled the air. Tin collapsed to his knees, gasping for breath. The house was utterly still, only the quiet patter of rain on the roof breaking the silence. He sat there for a long time, his heart pounding, his mind blank. Dr. Kang's diary slipped from his hands, falling open to the last page. Greater than, if the spirit departs, leave this place before nightfall. Greater than, if you still hear the music, it isn't over. He looked up. Outside, the breeze stirred gently. Then, from somewhere far away, came a faint melody. It wasn't the organ this time. It was a piano, soft, sorrowful, but now, two people were playing. The next morning, the fog was so thick that the sun couldn't pierce through. Tin sat with his back against the wall, eyes dark from exhaustion, his mind tangled with unease. The house was utterly silent, no music, no whispers, no trace of the girl or the old man. He thought, maybe it was finally over. But deep inside, a chill lingered, something still wasn't at peace. He folded the blood-stained diary and slipped it into his pocket. Greater than, it's done. I'm leaving this place. He stood up and stepped outside. The pine-covered hill was cloaked in fog, cold wind cutting against his face. His footsteps crunched on the damp dirt road. At the gate, he stopped. Something compelled him to turn back. The door was slightly ajar. The white curtain in the window fluttered faintly. And on the wooden table, the oil lamp flickered, though he was certain he had blown it out. He whispered, "Greater than, that's impossible." A strange gust swept by, carrying the scent of jasmine. At that moment, from inside the house, came music. He couldn't tell if it was the organ or the piano, only that it was warm. Haunting, heartbreakingly sad. Greater than, no one's inside. He moved closer, each step slower than the last. The door creaked open. Inside, through a veil of thin smoke, stood the old organ. Someone was sitting at the bench, their back turned. The oil lamp's glow outlined long, wet hair cascading down their shoulders. Tin's voice trembled. Greater than, thou, is that you? No answer. The figure kept playing, slow and mournful, a melody that clung to the heart like sorrow itself. He stepped forward, reaching out with a shaking hand to touch the person's shoulder. The skin was cold as ice. When they turned around, it wasn't the girl. It was him. A mirror of himself, with hollow eyes and ashen skin. He stumbled back, choking on fear. Greater than, no, that's not possible. I'm still alive. The other him smiled faintly, speaking in his exact voice. Greater than, you heard the music. That means, you've stayed. A sudden gust swept through, snuffing out the light. Darkness swallowed everything. The music grew louder, faster, then abruptly stopped. A freezing wave rippled through the house, the floor trembling like an earthquake. Tiles cracked, dust filled the air. Amid the chaos, he heard her voice, soft as a whisper in the wind. Greater than, thank you for staying with me. The next morning, villagers at the foot of the hill saw smoke rising from the old house. When they arrived, it was nothing but ashes. There was no sign of Tin, only the burned organ, its blackened keys still faintly echoing when the wind passed through. Since then, no one dares to go near that hill. They say that whenever the fog descends, a faint light glows in the old window. And the sound of the organ returns, sometimes one melody, sometimes two, weaving together in a sorrowful harmony that chills the soul. Someone once asked a villager, greater than, who's playing that music? And they simply answered, greater than, probably two souls, still in love, who never found their way home. The story ends here. Thank you for listening until the very end. If you enjoyed it, please give a like and subscribe. Your support means the world to us and helps us continue creating more haunting tales for you. If you have any questions or notice any details we missed, feel free to comment below. Thank you for watching. Bong Toi Trong Dem *. We'll see you again in the next story. The content of this video belongs to the horror fiction genre, created purely for entertainment to bring an eerie experience to viewers. We do not promote superstition or encourage any dangerous behavior mentioned in the story. Any resemblance to real people, places, or events is purely coincidental. Sincere thanks to all our audience for accompanying *Bong Toi Trong Dem *.